Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Snyder's Inc. Today, we got a MrBallen video. This one is, these teens have a terrifying secret. Mature answers only. We go get right into this, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the like button, hit subscribe button, comment what you think down below. Let's go.
Today's story has a very distressing and graphic plot twist at the end, and so viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. So if that's of interest to you, please tell the like button you're going to upload on your YouTube channel 3, 4, even 5 times every week, and then knock it down to 3 or 4 times a week, and then 2 or 3 times a week, and then 1 or 2 times a week, and then go ahead and just don't post for 3 weeks straight. Also, please subscribe to our channel.
I have a feeling this is something he's referring to himself in this situation.
And turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story.
Somehow I'm able to post two videos a day. That's something I just started doing, and that's not something that'll probably last forever. I don't know. We'll see how life goes in that situation.
Morgantown, West Virginia is this beautiful place nestled at the bottom of this huge mountain range called the Green Mountains. It is a big-time college town, as the famous West Virginia University is located there. And so during the school year, the town is full of young people, and during the football season, the town is absolutely buzzing with excitement. But the college is not the only reason people live in Morgantown. Lots of families choose to live there because there's so much to do year-round. Also, it's relatively safe, and in general, it's an up-and-coming place with new shops and restaurants, museums popping up every single year. But despite all of that, Morgantown is also known for something absolutely terrible, and that is the story of Skylar Neese. In 2012, 16-year-old Skylar Neese was a sophomore in high school in Morgantown, West Virginia. She was a straight-A student, and she worked part-time at a Wendy's, which is a fast food restaurant chain, and
She's very cute.
by all accounts, she was extremely well liked by her peers, her co-workers, and had many, many friends. She was the only child of Mary and David Neese, and they absolutely adored her. David, in particular, who was this big, burly man's man, he said that he spoiled his daughter rotten. The parents would say their daughter was full of love and life, and she was fiercely loyal, and at times, she could be absolutely hilarious. One of Dave's fondest memories is when Skylar was a very young girl, he was home taking care of her by himself. And that morning, as he's looking after her, she asks him if he will participate in one of her trademark tea parties. And so David, the ever-dutiful father, walks over and says, "Of course, I'll participate in your tea party." And he sits down in this little tiny pink chair, and his daughter, who's got her ballerina tutu on, she's across the table and she's all smiles, and she sits down in her little pink chair, and she hands him this little plastic teacup. And so he takes the teacup and he sees there's water already inside of it, and so he sips the tea inside of the cup, and he says, "Oh, it's so good, honey, you did such a good job brewing this tea." And Skylar is just blushing. She is so happy and so thrilled that he liked her tea. Later that night, when Mary came home from work, she goes to her husband Dave and says, "Hey, how did it go? How was it looking after Skylar today?" And Dave would tell her about all the things they did, including their big tea party, and he would tell Mary that, this time she actually put water inside of the teacup, so it was actually like a real tea party. And Mary stops him and goes, "Dave, Skylar's not tall enough to reach the faucet. How could she have put water inside of those cups?" And it turned out Skylar was using toilet water to fill the teacups.
There we go. There's the twist. I love it. Well, I mean, she was innovative. She kind of came up. She went with what she had. Can't get mad at her for it. I can't get mad at her for it.
Fast forward to 2012, and on the night of July 5th, 16-year-old Skylar Neese had just finished a night shift at the...
That's 10 years ago? Okay, about 10 years ago.
Wendy's restaurant.
About over 10 years ago.
And she just got home. She walks through the front door of her family's apartment. And as soon as she gets inside, she tells her parents she's really tired. She wants to go to bed. And so she hugged both of her parents. She told them that she loved them. And then Mary and Dave watched their daughter walk down the first floor hallway. And then they watched her open her bedroom door, go inside, and shut it behind her. The following morning, Mary and Dave both had to work, so they were up early, and Skylar was not up. She was still in her bedroom, her door was still shut, and so they assumed she was just going to sleep in. And so Mary and Dave, they make breakfast, they're chatting, they're kind of doing their morning routine, and then when it was time to go to work, they decided, let's not bother Skylar. She worked late last night, let her sleep in. And so the parents, they leave without seeing or talking to their daughter. Later that afternoon, Dave would come home early from work, and he gets to the apartment, he goes inside, and it's quiet. Now, Mary was still at work, but Skylar at this point really should not have been asleep. It's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so he's thinking, she's got to be up around here somewhere. And so he yells out to his daughter, hey, I'm home. Where are you? What are you up to? But there was no response. It was just silent. And so he walked down the first floor hallway towards his daughter's bedroom, and he saw the door was still shut. Now, she only kept that door shut when she was sleeping. And so he's thinking, okay, I guess she must still be asleep. This is really late in the afternoon. So, I'm going to knock on the door and see if she's okay. And so he knocks on the door and says, hey, Sky, it's late in the afternoon. You got to get up. But there was no answer. And when he listened to the door, there was no noise coming from the bedroom. And so he thought that was pretty weird. And so he knocked a few more times. He yelled out a few more times. And when there was no response, no answer, no sound, he opened the door up. And when he looked inside, Skylar was not in there. Now, Dave was thinking to himself, I don't think my daughter told me that she would be gone today, or at least not right now. And he's trying to think, did she say something? Was she meeting someone today? And he couldn't think of it. And so he just pulled his phone out and he called his daughter. But she didn't pick up. So he called his wife, Mary, and Mary's at work. And Mary picks up and Dave asked her, hey, have you seen Skylar, or do you know where she is right now? And she would say, no, I don't know where she is. Maybe she's out with one of her friends. And so after Dave hung up the phone with his wife, he wound up calling one of Skylar's very closest friends. Her name was Sheila, and she had known Skylar since they were in second grade. They were practically inseparable, and he had a good relationship with Sheila. And so he just calls Sheila and he says, hey, I haven't seen Skylar. She's gone right now. Do you know where she is? And Sheila would say, no, I'm sorry, I don't, but I did talk to her last night, but there was nothing unusual about our interaction. It was just normal texting about, normal stuff. And so Dave said, okay, thank you. Well, if you could, can you please try to get in touch with Skylar? And if you do get in touch with her, please tell her to get in touch with us. Or if you hear anything about her, please just let me know. After Dave hung
What's annoying about this is probably because it's the girl's 16, the police aren't going to jump right into action. Because she's 16 years old, so to them, that's probably, if she is reported missing, they'll just see it as a 16-year-old's kind of gone. So they won't rush into anything.
Up the phone with Sheila, he kind of stopped and just looked around his daughter's bedroom and thought, maybe there's some clue in here about where she's gone. And at first glance, really nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But when he walked around her bed and was looking inside of her closet, he saw the mesh screen that should have been mounted on the outside of her window was in her closet. And he's thinking, why is that in there? There's no reason for it to be in the closet. And so instinctively, he just turns around and walks over to the window that this screen is supposed to be on. And when he looks down at the bottom of the window, he sees it's open, barely, just enough where you could maybe get your fingernails underneath the window and pry it open. And so Dave reaches down and opens this window all the way. And because there was no screen on this window, he just stuck his head all the way out the window. So his head is outside of the apartment. He's just kind of looking around, looking for some explanation of why this screen had been removed and put in her closet. And he got his explanation when he looked straight down and saw on the grass outside, just several feet below this window, because this is a first floor window, there was a bench, and the bench clearly had been moved there recently. For Dave, even though he had never heard of his daughter sneaking out of the house before and really didn't think that was something she would do, he's looking around thinking, okay, the evidence in her room and now outside of her room really indicates that that is exactly what she must have done the night before. She must have snuck out. But as he's processing this, he's also thinking, okay, well, if she snuck out of the house last night and then, snuck back into her room, why didn't she replace the screen on the window? And why didn't she close the window all the way? And then this morning, before she left to go wherever she went, why didn't she go outside and move?
Oh, I would have clicked to this really easily. That is like, oh, she snuck out and she's not back. Like, that would have been my immediate click. Like, she snuck out and she's not back yet. Like, that would have been my first thought. I don't know why he would have not thought that way.
Move the bench from under her window back to where it was supposed to go to avoid suspicion. Why didn't she do that? And then it dawns on him that his daughter must have snuck out the night before, but not come back yet. She's still out wherever she went.
There we go. See, now his brain's working. Now his brain's thinking, because that's what I would have thought too.
Dave was very concerned. However, he's thinking maybe there's a better explanation. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. Maybe she didn't sneak out. And so he calls his wife to kind of just talk with her and figure out what they should do. And they decide, you know what, this is concerning, but let's just give her a couple of hours to turn back up again. I'm sure she's fine. And so they begin to wait. And then at 4 p.m. that evening, Wendy's, the restaurant where Skylar worked, called Dave and said, hey, have you seen Skylar? She was supposed to work today and she didn't show up. She didn't call. It's very unlike her. You know, what's going on? And this was the tipping point. Dave and Mary knew something had to be.
She didn't show up for work. That's when you know it's suspicious, because she probably either loved her job or just really enjoyed her job for the fact she could get paid. So she never probably misses a day of work. So that was the tipping point. That makes sense.
Wrong. And so Dave called the police.
Long County 911, do you have an emergency?
I have a 16-year-old daughter who apparently snuck out of her room last night. She has not been home, hasn't went to work, can't get a hold of her from any of her friends. I am scared to death.
Has she done this before?
No.
After Dave got off the phone, he and his wife began kind of frantically figuring out what they should do. You know, while the police are out looking, you know, should we go out and look too? Or should we stay here in case she comes home and, you know, maybe she's hurt. Maybe we can help her if she gets here. And so they're having this really difficult and stressful conversation.
It's tough to say go out and look for, because you don't know where to look. You don't know where to go. You don't know where the starting point is. Because you don't know where the starting point is, you don't know what to do.
When Mary's phone rings, and it's Sheila. And so Mary immediately answers it, hoping for some good news about her daughter. But Sheila asks Mary right away, you know, hey, has Skylar come home yet? And Mary says, no, she hasn't. And in fact, we just got off the phone with the police because this doesn't make sense. Something's wrong and we're getting the police involved. And so when Sheila hears this, she kind of takes a deep breath. And then after a little bit of a hesitation, she says, Mary, I've got to tell you the truth about last night. She would go on to explain that the night before, Skylar had snuck out of the house, and so had she, along with their other very close friend named Rachel. And Rachel was someone that Mary and Dave also knew very, very well. The three girls were kind of like best friends.
I'm gonna be honest. She looks like a bitch. I'm sorry. Like, these two kind of do. Like, these two kind of do. She looks like a kind of... How am I going to try to word this? Goofball. That's what I am going to... Like, a cute girl is a goofball. All three of these girls are attractive. But she looks like a goofball. She looks like she's a mixture of a goofball and a bitch. She looks like she's a straight bitch. That's my way to describe this. I'm sorry that I'm sounding mean here, but I just got to describe how I feel. Goofball, and a bitch. Straight bitch. That's how I see it.
Friends and totally inseparable. And so Sheila said the three of them snuck out, and in fact they did this a lot, and they would drive around town and smoke marijuana together. But this was not the big reveal. Despite this being fairly shocking to Mary and Dave, this was not the big reveal. The big reveal was that when they went out and snuck out of their houses and smoked weed together, they would make sure they never drove their car. Whoever was driving would never drive directly in front of any of their houses, because they were concerned that the noise from the car could wake up parents and then they'd get caught. And so the way they...
Hold on a minute. Unless you live in an area where no one comes around, the parents aren't gonna see a car, hear a car, and just go, this doesn't add up, they gotta be sneaking out. Like, that's not how a parent's brain works. If you have a parent who's that bad, who thinks anytime they hear a car that means you're sneaking out, that parent has a problem.
They would do it is after they snuck out of their house, they would walk a block or two away from their house, and then they would call or text the other two, and they'd get picked up and they'd go do their thing. And then when they got dropped off, they would get dropped off a block or two away from their home and then walk the rest of the way. And so Sheila told Mary that last night, like so many other nights, she dropped Skylar off about a block away from their apartment, and then Sheila and Rachel drove off. So they did not actually see Skylar enter her apartment. So they don't know for sure if she actually made it home okay. And so this was obviously horrifying for Mary and Dave to hear, because it totally opened the door for their daughter to have been abducted during this walk from the drop-off point back to her apartment. And the street she was on was not well lit. It's the middle of the night. It's dark. She's potentially high on marijuana. And so it seemed like that was a very realistic thing that could have happened, as horrifying as it sounded. And so after Mary got off the phone with Sheila, she called the police and she updated them about what Sheila had told her. And then Mary and Dave met up with Sheila and Sheila's mother and began searching the immediate area around their apartment in hopes that maybe, she fell somewhere and she's trapped and she just needs to be picked up or helped in some way. But after searching for several hours and knocking on dozens and dozens of doors, nobody saw anything, nobody knew anything. There was no sign of Skylar. And so as this group is totally down, they don't know what to do, they feel totally helpless. They know the police are out looking for Skylar, but they want to do something and they don't know what to do. And that's when Mary remembers there is a security camera on the outside of their apartment building that is looking down at the road. And so right away, the four of them literally run back to the apartment building. They go inside, they find the security manager, they explain the situation, and sure enough, he pulls up the footage from the night before, and the footage they see doesn't make sense. Sheila had dropped Skylar off on that corner, kind of out of view of the camera, at around midnight. But at 12:30, so 30 minutes after she's been dropped off, you see this unknown kind of generic looking car pull up right in front of the apartment complex. And then Skylar comes running across the lawn.
It's this story. I know the story now. The faces didn't click. I know the story now. I was right. Turns out I'm gonna be right. I know the story now. I'm right. I'm right in my opinion on these two, on the girls. I'm right on opinion on the girls. I'm right here.
Goes right up to the car, opens the back door, hops in the back seat, shuts it, and the car drives off. Even though this did not solve the mystery of where their daughter was, because they had no idea what car this was, who was driving it, or where they were going, Mary and Dave still felt relieved, because from their perspective, it seemed like their daughter had willingly got into this vehicle. Whoever it was, whatever they were doing, she had gotten in on purpose, which meant she probably was not being abducted, which was their big fear. Over the next couple of days, the police analyzed this footage and tried to get information about this car, but the footage was so grainy, they couldn't do it. However, the police were telling Dave and Mary, hey guys, I'm sure Skylar is going to show up any day now, as much as you may not want to believe it.
This is going to be so hard to watch because I know I'm not going to reveal what it is. All I'll say is I'm right about my opinion on her friends. But this is hard for me to watch because I know what happens.
That your daughter is capable of running away, it is fairly common for teens to do that. They'll run away and then, a couple days later they'll pop back up. And so I'm sure that's what's going on with Skylar. She chose to get in that car, and so I'm sure she will choose to get back in touch when she feels comfortable. So a couple of days go by and the parents haven't heard anything from their daughter. And then a couple of weeks go by, still nothing. And then a couple of months go by, still nothing. And this is all despite the fact that there is a massive search happening led by the police and locals.
I'm about to say, you can't tell the parents aren't doing anything for months on end, because that's not what's happening here. They would wait a few days, even though, it'd be a horrible few days. But yeah, you are not waiting weeks and months just hoping she returned. By that point, you'd think something's up.
In Morgantown have put flyers up everywhere that have pictures of Skylar Neese's face. Everywhere in town and in neighboring towns, it was like you could not go 5 feet without being reminded that this girl is missing. Have you seen her? If you have, give us information. Despite the amount of publicity this case was getting, no one came forward with any meaningful information. It was like Skylar had just vanished and no one had a clue what happened to her. Her parents were obviously devastated that they had no idea what happened to her, but they were kind of holding on to this idea that, maybe she did run away and maybe she will eventually be in touch with us. But by December of that year, so 6 months after Skylar had gone missing.
6 months? I didn't realize how long it was before this got resolved. 6 months? Oh my god, if I was a parent, that would be torture to my brain. I wouldn't be able to live and do normal life not knowing what had happened to her. I wouldn't be able to work, think, eat, sleep, anything.
No one had heard from her, no one had seen her, no one had any idea where she was, there was no new leads, and so people were starting to feel less and less optimistic, and the case was starting to kind of go cold. And then on December 12th, something totally unexpected happened that changed everything. On that night, Rachel, the other friend who had been there with Sheila and with Skylar on the night that Skylar had vanished, she has a full-blown nervous breakdown. In fact, it's so bad that she's screaming and running around.
She had a mental breakdown out of nowhere? Just straight snapped? What the hell?
And she's punching her family members, and her mom actually calls the police on her.
I have an issue with a 16-year-old daughter of mine. I can't control her anymore. She's screaming. She's running through the neighborhood. Give me the phone. No, this is over. This is over. Hurry up. Get away from her. Oh, God. She just gave me a block. Oh, God. Hurry up, please.
After this call was made, the police show up to Rachel's house and they take her away to a psychiatric hospital. And then several days later, when she was released from that hospital, she went straight to the Morgantown Police Department. She walked inside and said, I gotta get something off my chest about Skylar. Apparently, whatever it was that she had been keeping secret had just been too difficult to keep inside. It was quite literally driving her crazy. And so the police said, okay, great. And they brought her into an interview room. They sat down and they said, okay, what do you got for us? The following has been pulled from what Rachel told police. Back on July 5th, 2012, Skylar came home from that night shift at Wendy's. She goes inside her family's apartment. She says goodnight to her mom and dad. She goes into her bedroom and she shuts the door and she's...
This is torture for me to hear. My heart breaks when I hear this story.
Laying on her bed, she's on her phone, she's not going to bed quite yet. And as she's laying there, she starts getting text messages from Rachel and also from Sheila asking her if she wants to sneak out that night. Now, Skylar didn't want to, and she said as much because she was actually hurting. She was mad at her two friends. According to some of her other friends that went to school with her and Rachel and Sheila, the three of them were totally inseparable, but lately, kind of the few months leading up to when she ultimately disappeared, there had been tension in their group. It seemed like Sheila and Rachel were getting very, very close and kind of pushing Skylar away, and Skylar was starting to pick up on it. It was little things like Sheila and Rachel would show up to school in matching outfits, but they wouldn't tell Skylar beforehand, kind of leaving her out. Or whenever they posted selfies of the three of them, Skylar was always relegated to the back or kind of in some other way obscured to make sure she was not the focal point of the picture. It was just very obvious that they were deprioritizing Skylar, and it was really hurting Skylar's feelings. And so it seemed like her way of standing up to them and kind of telling them that she was upset was to turn down their offer of sneaking out and smoking weed with them. But over the next couple of hours, Skylar would eventually say, okay, fine, you know.
That is very persistent. I will admit, if hours later, I would be... After hours, I'm like, I'm going to bed. Listen, I have things to do. I'm not sneaking out after hours of me telling you no. Like, get a grip, get over it.
I'll come with you guys. I'll sneak out and we'll go smoke together. Just before 12:30 a.m. on July 6th, Skylar gets off of her bed. She walks over to her window. She lifts...
This just closed my mind. If it's... I might have gotten the switch wrong then. Hold on. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I thought Rachel was just a complete bitch. and Sheila was like a goofball, so that's a bitch. But if Rachel's the one that has, like, guilt over what she did to the point of causing them a mental fucking breakdown, Sheila might be the heartless one that I thought of.
Set up, and she pulls the screen off, and she walks over to her closet. She puts the screen in her closet and shuts the door to the closet, and then she walks back over to the window and crawls out and lowers herself down onto the grass below, and then she walks over and grabs the bench and slides it over and puts it right underneath her window, and then she stands on the bench and reaches up and pulls the window down so there's just a little crack left so she can get back inside. And then she just waited by the side of the apartment looking out towards the road, and right after 12:30, this car, the unknown car on the surveillance camera, pulls right in front of the apartment building, and Skylar runs over to it, opens up the back right door, and climbs inside. This unknown car was Sheila's car. Sheila was driving, and Rachel was in the...
Wait, did they not look at them? Did they not notice that? Did they not look at that? Like, I would think if you looked at the way the car looks... Hold on.
climbs inside. This unknown car runs over to it, opens up the back right door, and climbs inside. This unknown car on the...
If I looked at... I didn't realize how far to go. If I looked at this car, and then I saw Sheila driving up in this car, my response would be, hey, this looks like your car. Like, that would be my thought, because it's somewhat, like, you can still get somewhat of a look of the car, like... Very weird. Very weird that it's like moved past her. I would have not done that.
Sheila's car. Sheila was driving, and Rachel was in the front passenger seat. It would turn out Rachel and Sheila lied about basically everything, including what time they picked up Skylar. So the three girls, they drive away from Skylar's apartment, and Sheila hops on a highway and starts driving northwest. Now, the girls did not immediately start smoking inside of the car. They decided instead they would actually drive to a location, get out, and smoke there. And the place they decided on was a spot they had smoked at before. It was a known hangout spot for teenagers. It was located about 45 minutes away, just barely across the border into Pennsylvania. It was down this kind of old country road that nobody ever went on. And so...
Why is there a known area for teenagers in this area to go somewhere 45 miles or 45 minutes away? But that's weird.
So Sheila drives the car 45 minutes. She crosses into Pennsylvania.
That's a weird hangout spot for teenagers to be going place 45 minutes away. I just find that weird to me.
She finds the turn onto this old road. They drive down it a little ways until they're pretty far away from the highway, at which point Sheila pulls off the road onto the grass, parks the car. The three girls get out, and they walk past the car a little ways down the path to a clearing on the right. There was a hill that went up on the right, and they would kind of sit on this hill looking downhill, and that would be where they would smoke. And so the three girls, they sit down. They're all next to each other, facing downhill. They're not facing each other. And Sheila, who is sitting all the way to the right with the car being over to the left, she pulls out the marijuana joint, and she's about to light it, but she realizes she does not have a lighter. And so she asks Rachel and Skylar if they have a lighter, and they both pat themselves down. They're checking themselves. They don't have a lighter. And then Sheila says to Skylar, who's all the way to the left of the way they're sitting, so Skylar is closest to the car, she asks Skylar, hey, can you go in the car and get the lighter that I know is in there? And Skylar said, no problem. So Skylar, she stands up and she turns. Her back is to her two friends. And as soon as she starts walking, what she would have heard is the sound of her two friends standing up as well, and then loudly saying, 1, 2, 3. And on 3, Skylar would have felt two knives being plunged into her back by Rachel.
I knew the story, it's still the twist shot. What the fuck? I knew what the reveal was. I knew what the reveal was. I've heard this story because it was on Investigating Discovery, I think, and some other one, some other investigation, like, true crime thing. I've heard this story multiple times. Why did this shock me?
and by Sheila. In a panic, Skylar does not even turn around. She just starts taking off running towards the car, and she manages to run away from her attackers. But because of her grievous injuries in her back, she eventually slows down, at which point Sheila tackles her from behind. She gets her on the ground, she pins her on her back, and Sheila is trying to stab Skylar, but Skylar's doing her best to keep the knife off of her. But at some point, Rachel comes running up beside them, and between Rachel and Sheila, they managed to hold Skylar's hands down, at which point Sheila and Rachel began taking turns stabbing her in the chest and in the neck. The whole time Skylar is trying to defend herself, but it's impossible with these two on top of her. And at some point she just kind of gives up and she says, "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?" But they don't give her a reason. They just keep on going. And eventually Rachel stops stabbing Skylar, but Sheila doesn't. Sheila keeps on going.
So Sheila was the crazy bitch. Sheila was the guaranteed bitch. Rachel, I'll still say, looks like she would have been. But apparently Sheila is the just general planned bitch. I don't know what her issue is, but she grew tired and pissed and bitter towards Skylar, and apparently that was their only way to stop being a friend, apparently. Because that's how dipshitted some teenage girl's brains are, apparently.
Until, quote, her neck stopped making gurgling sounds. And then once Skylar went still, Sheila stood up like it was nothing, and she and Rachel just walked away from her body back to the car. They went around to the trunk of the car, they opened it up, and inside was shovels, bleach, trash bags, rags. They had brought along a kill kit because they knew what they were going to do this night. And so they start by cleaning themselves off. They get the blood off of them and off of their weapons, and then they take the shovels and they walk a little ways off of the road, kind of into the woods, and they try to dig a grave, but it would turn out the ground was too hard. And so they abandon the grave idea and just grab Skylar's lifeless body and drag it just about 6 feet off of the road and kind of chuck it against a log. And then they threw boulders and sticks and anything they could on top of her body. They don't know if she's still alive at this point, so they're potentially dealing the fatal blow with these rocks and logs. They cover her up until she's totally obscured, and then the two girls just walk back up. They grab their shovels, they grab their rags, their bleach, they put it back in the trunk, they hop in their car, and they drive away. It would turn out Rachel and Sheila had been planning this for months. The reason? They didn't like Skylar anymore, and apparently it wasn't enough to just be mean to her and not include her in things. They actually needed to kill her. And so the entire...
It's shit. This is the most dipshitted, low-life, moronic, fucked up, crazy, inconceivable thought processes I've ever... People, please help me. Help me figure out how this can be a thought. These two are psychopaths. Sociopaths, whatever you want to call them. These two are not right in the head. At all. They both need help. But I don't want them to get help. Leave them in prison. Fucking put them under the jail. Evil at its finest.
Entire night that they went out and snuck out, that was all planned. They knew Skylar did not want to come out and sneak out with them because they knew she was upset with them. And so they said whatever they had to say to convince her to leave her house and sneak out with them. And so she did. She snuck out. And when she got in that car, Sheila and Rachel had their knives already in their front pocket of their sweatshirt, ready to go. And on their ride to this spot in Pennsylvania, Sheila and Rachel acted like, oh, let's just go to this spot and smoke. When in reality, this was planned too. They wanted to make sure they were far away from...
I was thinking, I was like, this is not a known area. This is not a... When they started sneaking out and going to this spot, it was just so when they took her here to actually finish the job and kill her, that she wouldn't find it suspicious that they're going this far.
From Morgantown when they killed Skylar. And so when they got there and they walked down to their spot to actually begin smoking, Sheila and Rachel had intentionally not brought lighters, and Sheila had left a lighter in the car specifically so she could ask Skylar to go get it. because the plan was, as soon as Skylar gets up to get that lighter and her back is to us, Sheila and Rachel had promised each other that they would count to 3 and then attack her. Ultimately, Rachel would be sentenced to 30 years in prison, but she'll be eligible for parole in 2023, and Sheila would be sentenced.
She's eligible for parole this year? What? You better not get parole, neither of you.
Sentenced to life in prison, but she would also be eligible for parole in 2028.
Neither of these two should be eligible for parole. They took a life. They planned it for months. None of them, not one of them should be eligible for parole. Keep them both in jail. Fuck both of them.
In their trials, Rachel was very remorseful and even gave an apology to Skylar's parents during the sentencing phase. Sheila, on the other hand, smirked during her trial for most of the time.
Oh, you look like a never mind, I was wrong. I went by pictures. Because, yeah, she's remorseful, she's saying apology, she looks whatever. This bitch, she's a cunt. Oh, she's a horrible friend. Why is this guy so shocked? Why is he so in disbelief? Did I miss something? I don't know what was said, but this man is legitimately flabbergasted. But she totally looks like a bitch. Oh, she looks horrible. She's the one that's the... It was clear she was a mean girl. She didn't like someone, thought the only way to respond to that, but not like someone, is to fucking kill them.
She was smiling and totally making light of it. She said she didn't do it. She was totally not remorseful, and she did not offer an apology to Skylar's parents. She did, however, leave an unbelievably cruel message on Twitter. In March of 2013, when the police came out and officially said, "We have identified the remains in the forest in Pennsylvania as belonging to Skylar Neese," when that announcement was made, just a couple of days later, Sheila tweeted,
"No, you fucking didn't, you... Oh, you cunt. Oh, my God. We really did go on 3. Never let this chick out of jail ever. Ever. Never let her out. I want her to rot in prison."
We really did go on 3. Sheila was arrested 1 month later. So that's going to do it, guys. If you got something out of today's episode...
Oh, that's so messed up. That is so goddamn messed up. Oh, this annoys me to its core. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this reaction video. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all for the next one.